Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do to get started is to disconnect our negative battery terminal. Set that aside so it's not making any contact with the battery. Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do is go ahead and put our key in the ignition, put it into the on position, and then we're going to bring this all the way down. Go ahead and turn the key back as far as it'll go. All right, now the next thing we want to do is move down along under here. We're going to remove this bolt and then the one that's on the opposite side of the steering column. Now let's carefully pull down on this a little bit, and that exposes the bolts right up along here. There's one right there, and then one on the opposite side of the steering column again. Now that we got those two screws out, let's go ahead and lower the steering column here, and we're going to remove this center screw right here. Now we're going to move along to using a plastic trim tool so we don't damage our dash. I'm going to come right in between this plate and the dash itself. Just work your way around. Perfect. Now keep in mind that of course you do have a couple different switches and different areas that might potentially have wiring behind it. So go ahead and take a peek behind and then remove the wiring. Okay, so now looking at our wiring here, we have the blue harness. There's going to be a little tab that's on the lower aspect of that. Go ahead and press up on that and then draw this away. There's the tab. This one right here, I've got a tab on the driver's side. I'm going to pry on that and then draw that away. Of course, any electrical connectors that you do disconnect, you're going to want to check them to make sure you don't see any funny colors. If you do, it's corrosion and it needs to be dealt with. Let's do this lower one, a yellow connector. Now all the way over on the driver's side, we're going to relieve the headlight switch connector. There's a little tab. Go ahead and press on that and draw this away. Now for this lower harness, we're just going to go ahead and press on this tab right along here, the white one, and then we'll draw it off. Grab this unit and remove it. Okay, now we're going to move along to underneath the steering column. There's going to be a mounting bolt right here and then one right here. Let's remove the pair using our Torx head driver. There's one. Okay, now that we have the bolts out, we're going to continue on by separating the two pieces. There's a lower aspect and an upper aspect. We need to get right in between this area here and separate them. Now we need to remove the adjustment handle. To do that, I'm just going to use my plastic trim tool, come right along this area here, and then gently pry it away. There it is. Grab onto this lower cover, remove it from the upper cover, and then remove it from the steering column. Now we need to make our way underneath the steering column. There's going to be an inverted Torx bolt, and you're going to use a tool that looks like this one. I'm right up in here. Remove this bolt. Now with that unscrewed, we can carefully lift up on this and remove it from the steering column. All right, now the next thing we need is a nice sharp pick. We're going to carefully come in between this white tab right here and the column itself and just gently pry. That's going to allow this to turn, and then we'll draw it up and out. This right along here was the area that I was squeezing onto and pressing so I could release it. Now the next thing I want to do is continue on with my pick, and you're going to see right up along the top of your steering column, you have this little hole right along here. If I was to carefully let this go in, and then take my key and turn it to the on position, I can feel that it presses on the little tab that's inside here. So what I need to do now is just kind of press down with my pick at the same time as I'm turning, and then draw it away from the vehicle. There it is, friends. Okay, friends, now it's going to be time to get ready for our install. You might notice as you try to go ahead and line this up and slide it in, it kind of bonks a little bit. And it doesn't matter how you try to turn this, it's just not going to want to push in. So what we need to pay attention to is while we have this in like this, and you draw it straight out, pay attention to the very end of this. It's going to be facing essentially in this direction. But if you were to look inside of this area here on the steering column, it's not going to be lined up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on with a nice flat screwdriver here. I'm just going to make my way straight inside here to the area where this ignition cylinder is supposed to line up. I'm just going to carefully turn this, one click forward, just like that. Look inside, ensure that it's lined up with the way that this piton needs to be. Go ahead and push this in, give it a nice twist, and now it's locked in. Ensure that it can't come out, and it's definitely locked. Perfect. Now it's going to be time to reattach this. When we do it, we want to come in at an angle, just like this. If I can get my fingers out of the way. And then we're going to twist it to lock it in. Make sure that it's secure, and let's continue. Now it's going to be time to put the upper part of our clamshell on here. We want to, of course, line up the hole with our 4-way switch. Slide that down, get the 4-way switch in there, and then we're going to pay attention to this area along here. We want to make sure that our boot is sitting into the groove. With the boot lined up in the upper clamshell, now we're going to start lining this area up along the actual key area. We want to make sure that it's lined up as close as possible, then we're going to start in our mounting screw. I'm going to come right up and into the hole here. Now we'll start tightening it. Just remember, as you tighten it, once it starts to get snug, you pretty much want to stop there. We're screwing into plastic and we don't want to damage it. Perfect. For the lower clamshell, pay attention to this rearward area here. We have these two little hooky-doos on the back side. Those are going to need to line up with the areas on the upper clamshell. Once you have them lined up, slide it in and then lock in the lower clamshell. Got my driver's side. There's the passenger side. Just double check them, make sure they're both in. Now that we have both of our hooks lined up, let's pay attention to this boot area here. You also want to make sure that it's lined up with the lower clamshell as well. There we are. Now let's just go ahead and latch it in and then double check everything and we'll get our screws. Now let's put in our 2 screws. Start them both in and then we'll snug them up. Okay, that one's snugged up. Do the same to the other. I'm just going to be careful and bring this up and over here. Bring it down. I don't want to scuff my dash any. Let's go ahead and carefully bring this down. Okay, now with this sitting down like this, we're going to start connecting in our electrical connectors. We're going to connect the yellow one in right down along this area. Line it up, give it a push, and of course, give it a tug to make sure it's connected. Now let's connect in our other 2. We have this one right here. Give it a push, listen for a click, give it a tug. Same with the blue. Okay, now let's move over to the headlight switch. All right, let's get this one connected in. Nice squeeze, a nice tug. Same for this one. Perfect. Now when we slide this in, we want to make sure that we have these lower ears underneath this area here. We're going to bring them down, and of course we'll line up those bolt holes and then slide it in. There we are. Go ahead and give it a nice easy push. Perfect. Do the same to the other. Now with this lined up, let's put in our other screws under here. Do the same to the other side. One last bolt up in the center here. Now let's put our tilt adjustment lever back in. Just line it up with its corresponding slot and then push it in. All right, let's make sure it works. Steering column locks in the way that it should. Perfect. Okay, now back up at the front of the truck, let's go ahead and reconnect our negative battery terminal and snug it up. Give it a nice wiggle, make sure it's secure. Okay friends, all that's left to do is put your key in the ignition cylinder and make sure the truck starts.